Hey there, welcome to your readings for the week. These are the readings for the week ending July 23rd, the almost last week of the month. It's crazy how quickly this year is going by, but to be honest with you, I'm kind of happy about it. It's been sort of a challenge for me, and I know that it's been a challenge for a lot of people. Not that leaving the year is going to stop that, unfortunately, but who knows? You never know. We might get a little bit of a break from challenges. I always hold out hope anyways. So these are our readings for the week. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And we have a newbie this week, my good friend Jordan Davis. So we're going to start with Jordan. And let me just tune into you, Jordan. Okay. Okay, I do see a really busy week for you this week, and you got kind of a quite a few irons in the fire there. I will say. I know we didn't talk about all your irons in the fire, but I do see a couple of different irons in the fire. I know that doing the horoscopes last week, focus is on relationships. And so that can be sometimes a double-edged sword, especially with Jupiter in Aries right now, kind of sort of influencing. Sorry, my mouth goes faster than my brain. Influencing that house right now. Jupiter is all about growth and expansion. So what that means in terms of your relationships is it's a good time to be expanding in those relationships, not necessarily saying that you should replace all your friends with new friends. That's not what I'm saying. But there may be instances coming up this week and maybe even in the next few weeks, instances where you are in the process of building new relationships, if that makes sense. Maybe even in some cases reconnecting with friendships that you haven't been connected to in a while, and in some cases that's kind of a good thing. You have things happened, and time passes and things change. In other cases, not so much. I do feel that there may be an instance coming up with somebody from the past that you decide to reform an acquaintance with, and it turns out that not much has changed. And when that's the case, it's it kind of makes you want to go, I don't really think I want to pursue this relationship anymore. I gave it a second shot, and it's not working right. And you absolutely have the right to do that, regardless of what anybody has to say about that. So just keep that in mind. You want to form relationships that work for you, not relationships that are working against you. So for instance, if you've got a friend that is always needing help, and you're always helping them, and when it comes down to you needing help, they're never there, that's a very one-sided relationship, and not necessarily a healthy one for you. So you really want to take the time to analyze that relationship and see if it's really a relationship that's worth holding on to, honestly. And we all go through that from time to time. It's frustrating and it's annoying, and a lot of times you really love these people, and it just it just is what it is. I've had to do this a couple of times and cut ties with long time friends because I realized that this friendship was just, maybe not toxic necessarily, but not exactly healthy for me. Maybe it was a little healthier for her than it was for me. And because of that, it took up a lot more time than I really had for the relationship. And in a situation like that, it just, it kind of sucks. You can't do, I couldn't run my business. I really wasn't 100% there for my children and my husband at the time, which is my main focus always, obviously. And so it gets exhausting, the drama gets exhausting. So there may be some instances coming up for you where it's time to kind of sort of, look at those relationships really for what they are, not what you want them to be, but what they really are, and decide whether or not this is a healthy relationship for both of you. Because if it isn't, then it's really just it's not good for either one of you, really. So that's what I have for you, Jordan, and I hope that helps. And I'm going to move on to Darcy. Let's see what we got for Darcy. You see some fun coming up for you this week, actually. I know from the horoscopes astrologically. So we have a couple of interesting things going on in Taurus right now. We have Uranus in Taurus still, and it's going to be there for a while, to be honest with you, several more years. But we also have Mars in Taurus right now, and Mars energy in Taurus is can be a little bit uncomfortable. It can make you feel more aggressive than normal. It can make you feel like you have way more energy than normal. And for a fixed sign, that's kind of a problem, or it can be a problem. Being a fixed sign myself, Mars in Aquarius was kind of a double-edged sword, if that makes sense, because in one hand, I felt like I had a lot more energy than I normally do and a lot more motivation than I normally do. And so that was fun to jump on that bandwagon. But the downside to that was I started feeling burnt out too, like all the time, because my energy level is not the same as Mars energy level. So you do want a little bit of a balance there in terms of what you're doing. Just because you have the energy doesn't mean that you should put as much stuff into a day as extra stuff, I should say, into a day that you wouldn't normally. Because for me, a burnout, being a fixed sign, and I feel that this is very similar for you, a burnout is I ain't moving all that day. In fact, I have at least one day a week where I'm not moving that whole day. So you may find that you may need a couple of days of I'm not moving, kind of a thing, just because of that extra sort of energy boost. The good news, though, is that Taurus's focus is on money. And so with Uranus being squared with Saturn, which creates a challenge in terms of our money, Mars sort of gives us this crazy ambitious energy boost towards making money. And so you may find yourself finding things like side hustles or side gigs where you're making extra money. A lot of opportunities are coming up for that, and of course you want to jump on every single one of them. My advice is to jump on the best one and not necessarily every single one. If you jump on every single one, you may find yourself severely burnt out, and you definitely don't want to do that. As we get older, that severe burnout can turn into being sick really quick. And I have also learned that when my mind and body is tired, if I don't rest, I will get sick, and the universe will force me to rest. And I don't like to be forced to do anything. So these days, I definitely listen a lot better than I used to, for sure. Stubborn or not, I listen a little bit better. So this is really what your focus is this week, is all around money. And in terms of maybe making extra money, maybe even looking into investment opportunities, and even in some cases, or in many cases I should say, paying attention to your long-term money goals. So your long-term money goals are really important. I don't think we spend enough time on our long-term money goals as a rule. People in general. I mean, there's people that do, and then there's people that don't. And I think the majority of us don't do that. And we get to retirement age and we don't have anything. And that's, really not good. So it would be also a really good opportunity to kind of take stock of that and see where you're at with that. So that is what I have for you, Darcy. And I am going to move on to Connie. So I know that you are recovering from your surgery still. And I also know that your birthday is coming up. Maybe not, I know it's not coming up this week, but it is definitely coming up in the next couple of weeks. And so a couple of things. One, I see that your recovery is doing well. You have a little bit more get up and go this week, which is good. A little bit more opportunities to, kind of get some work done a little bit. Not necessarily going out and seeing clients yet. We're not quite there yet, but I do see, you going through that paperwork and getting some of that stuff done, which is good. I know we talked yesterday, literally yesterday, about boredom, and I feel like that's only going to get worse next week as far as you trying to find things to do that don't require a lot of movement. But it's sort of a mainly I can't stand this house anymore kind of a feeling, because you just been sort of stuck there for a while, and that does create a little bit of a problem. I see you being able to get up and about and move outside of the house a little bit after this week, but we're not quite there yet this week. So if you could just be patient a little bit longer. I know it's hard. But if you do what you are supposed to do, my phone obviously has something to say too. If you do what you're supposed to do, it will you will recover more quickly. So just keeping that in mind, and that might help a little bit. I am being shown, I know they have you on being out for the next 6 weeks in terms of work, but I still am shown the possibility of you getting a client, either a client calling you, or they're giving you a client and completely forgetting that you're still recovering. I don't necessarily think that this is a client that needs to be reassigned. I do feel that they will be able to wait a little bit longer, if that makes sense. So it's very similar to the other one that we were talking about yesterday, that you were going to sign about 6 months ago, and then it didn't happen. And of course, they called you right before your surgery, kind of a thing. So this is something, it could be a reoccurring client, but I do feel that they are more than willing to wait until you're fully recovered and can get back out there. So, try not to worry about that too terribly much. So that is what I have for you, Connie. And I'm going to move on to Jenny. I know that Jenny is on vacation right now, as a matter of fact, but next week, Jenny is coming back from vacation, and that is going to be a little bit of it's so hard to get back to work after you've been on vacation. I mean, it's so hard to get back into that groove again. And I kind of feel that sort of slump happening a little bit, or just it's not even that you can't do the job, it's just the energy. It just feels like you're dragging yourself back into work, if that makes sense, because you're very relaxed and and happy, and you know, you just got back from vacation. It's just, I don't know. I don't know about you, but for me, it was always hard to come back to work after a vacation. So I do see that being a thing for you, in terms of what's happening this week, for your readings. The other thing that I'm picking up is, I feel like one of the girls is going to come back from this vacation not feeling great. And I know your first thought's going to be COVID or something, you know, difficult to, you know, something that's going to rip through the whole household. And I don't necessarily see it as something that's going to rip through the whole household. And I don't necessarily see it as COVID either. I kind of feel like this is more of uh like an earache, or something that you're going to have to deal with, but it's not something that's like, you know, horrible that everybody's going to deal with. So it's more geared toward the child, and not necessarily something that's going to spread around to everybody else. So that's going to kind of, you know, as you jump back into work, you're sort of toggling back and forth between getting your work done and that. And so it's more of a frustration than anything. It's nothing major or anything like that. And of course you'll recover from it and everything will be fine there. So I'm not too terribly worried about it. And I could tell you that you shouldn't be too terribly worried about it either, but you know, you're a mom, and that's just going to happen. You know, it is what it is. So that is, I was going to say, that's what I see for you. But in terms of getting back into it, just take it one step at a time. Don't force yourself to get back to the pace that you normally are. Let yourself gradually get there, and you will gradually get there. You know, by the end of the week, you'll be back in that pace again. So don't beat yourself up too much at the beginning of the week, because you're not quite there yet, if that makes sense. So that is what I have for you, Jenny. And I'm going to move on to Theresa. We have a big thing this week. And in terms of getting that all set up at the end of the week, I'm not going to say it's going to be a challenge. It'll be a little bit of a challenge. We'll put it that way, just because, you know, you got to coordinate with everybody and, you know, do all that stuff. I kind of feel like there may be a little bit of an issue with the venue, the place that you're going to hold the celebration. It's going to feel like all of a sudden, you know, you've had this planned, and then they come out to you and go, you know, I didn't even, you know, I don't even have you on here. I don't know what you're talking about. It's a minor little glitch that they will fix. So it's not going to end the whole process. It's just one of those little things that it's annoying. It happens. You call them, they deal with it, they fix it, it's over. But I do see like a mini panic over it that you know, doesn't really need to be there, if that makes sense. So just, you know, I understand that emotionally it's very difficult sometimes to not react in that way, especially right now. But the more you kind of ride through that, I think the easier it is going to be for you, if that makes sense. So that's one thing that's coming up. The other thing is, I feel like this is like a double-edged feeling. You know, there's you know, this is the closure point, and in a grief cycle there really is never any closure, but the service traditionally is the closure, if that makes sense. And so I see that you're really busy getting everything together. You just want to be careful that you're not overextending yourself, if that makes sense, because by the time you get to that day, you don't want to be so exhausted that you really can't function or, enjoy the time or be 100% present for the service. It's something that you really want to be 100% present for. So in my opinion, it's like, when most people get married, they're so busy planning the day, even on the day, that you really have no recollection of the day at all later on. And it kind of has that same feeling. And this is just not something that you want to not remember because you're so busy trying to get it together, if that makes sense. I do see somebody is helping you. It's not necessarily just you, but you're in charge and you put yourself in that in charge position a lot. And so nothing will be done without you approving it. And so that means that there's a lot of phone calls and there's a lot of things to focus, things like that. So just try your best, I would say, this week to deal with those things, but give yourself that space also to kind of unplug from it as much as possible. I want to say after the service, and this is kind of getting into the following week's reading, but after the service is over, it's really important to give yourself a couple of days to just decompress and process and things like that, as much as you can. If there's any way to take that Monday off after the service, then do that if you can, just because there's always a danger of, and a lot of people do this, and I know a lot of laborers do this too, there's always a danger of trying to keep yourself busy in order to give yourself something to focus on other than the grief. And the problem with that is it extends out your grief process for a really long time. And I don't believe that a grief process ever fully ends, especially in a situation like you're in right now. But I will say that it does get easier after a while. And it's that easier part that you're sort of pushing away if you're not processing your feelings about it. And because you've been through the situation, because you're spending all of this time setting it up and making sure it runs smoothly and perfectly in the way that you want it, so that you can honor him the way that you want to honor him, you're going to need time to decompress from all of that. So I'm not forcing you to take that Monday off, but if you can take that Monday off, yeah, I really feel that it would be a good idea for you to do that. So that's what I have for you. And I am moving on to Regina right after this sip of coffee. And it's hot. I just made it. Regina. Okay. Focus was really on the past right now for Scorpios. There's really no planetary influences coming in this week, which is, as I said in the horoscopes, it's a good thing. It's not a good thing. I mean, it really depends on how you look at it. With no planetary influence, there really is no blocks, no roadblocks. But at the same time, there's no helpful push forward either. So it's more, I kind of look at the time where there's no planetary influences. You're just walking, you're not running, there's not wind pushing you forward, but you're not having to climb over a wall either. you know which, as the planets interact with each other, sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's not such a good thing. I want to say that you're looking for a new opportunity, if that makes sense. and I can't really say 100% if you're looking for a new opportunity in terms of your job, or if you're looking for a new opportunity in terms of solidifying some relationships, if that makes sense. I kind of feel like actually it may be coming from both places in a way, which is kind of interesting. But I feel like this week, in terms of focus on the past, a lot of times we take that time and we look back on when things were so much better than they are right now. And when we look at it in that point of view, we are sort of setting ourselves up for failure now, if that makes any sense at all. Because you can't go back to where it was better. You can't 100% recreate it, which makes things a little bit difficult. What you can do, though, is you can look at what in the past made life feel like it was better. And what you can incorporate into your life that mimics that does help. So for instance, if you were, you were younger and you had more money to burn, you used to go to out to eat all the time, and now you're broke and you can never go out to eat. Give yourself the space to be able to maybe incorporate going out to eat once a week or once a month or bi-weekly or something like that, so that you can shake things up a little bit. I think as we get older, we just get so wrapped up in our day-to-day struggles or our day-to-day activities or whatever it is, that we sort of lose sight of this other person that we were at one time. And instead of finding a way to sort of re-embrace that a little bit, we wallow in what was instead of what we can do now. And that really is the thing that screws everything up, if that makes sense. So we don't want to do that, obviously. You want to try and move forward as much as possible. And the past has some valuable lessons on how to do that. I mean, you've made mistakes in the past. You can learn from the mistakes that you made to make sure that you don't necessarily make the same mistakes again. So you're using your past to better your future, rather than getting stuck in what was and what you can never have anymore, if that makes sense. So that is what I have for you. And I'm going to move on to Theresa Sheppard. Okay, I see a lot of traveling this week, which I'm not surprised, just what you do. And when I say I see a lot of traveling this week, I don't really see a lot of time for fun, if that makes sense. It's like you travel, you sleep, you work, you get on a plane, you go to sleep, you blah blah blah. I mean, it's there really isn't like a lot of time in between. And so I feel like this is really going to kind of wear you out a little bit, more so than, I mean, it just seems like a very crazy busy week. It's like you're trying to put as many things in this week as possible. My hope is that when this crazy travel time is done, that you take some time to rest. That's my hope. Whether or not that you actually can do that or not, is kind of neither here nor there right now. I'm not really sure how that's going to go. I actually don't really see a whole lot of time to rest. I see you coming home, getting everything that you need to get done, and then getting back on another plane. So my advice is, as much as you can, to unplug, to rest. You can do that on the plane to a certain extent, providing you don't have a bunch of people around you, which is good. and the time that you do have to yourself, make the most of that time, in terms of relaxation, hot tub time if you can, meditation, kind of a thing, just to make sure that you keep your energy level where it needs to be in order for you to be able to continue doing what you're doing, if that makes sense. The other thing that's sort of popping up is I see a little bit of a complication coming up health wise, not necessarily for you. I kind of feel that this has more to do with your husband, actually. Um, it's not a major complication, but it's sort of one of those things that comes up that makes you feel like you're pulled in two different directions. So you're literally being pulled, I mean, you're on the East Coast and he's here in the West Coast, and you're like, oh my God, I have to work, but I have to. But there are also people to come in and help with that. So just, before you make that panic, keep in mind that you can always make a phone call and somebody can go check in on that. I do see a doctor appointment involved in this quote unquote complication. So again, it's not something that's um deadly necessarily, but it could be if it's not taken care of, if that makes sense. There's also the possibility that this is something that's come up before and it's coming up again. So it really does need to be addressed, but it's not something that if you don't address it that day, it's not going to get done, if that makes sense. So I know you've got things that are set up to handle that, and of course nobody's going to handle it as well as you do, but it will be handled. So try not to make yourself sick worrying about that. And that's what I have for you. I am moving on to Amanda. I love you. Okay. I love you. My vision of you is, it's almost like you're standing on your desk with your arms in the air going, yes, right? And I feel that this has something to do with, it could be something involving the websites. It's something that I feel like you've been trying to figure out and figure out and figure out, and you finally get it. And you're like, I finally got it. And you're just so excited about it. And I also feel like you want to share your excitement, like, and so you're going and talking to your family about how excited you are that you did this, and it just doesn't seem like they care. And it's not that they don't care. I think that, one of the things actually that Sheri, my wonderful mentor and stepmom, taught me was, you can't expect people to see things from your point of view. So, for instance, you're the one that's been struggling with this and trying to figure it out and getting frustrated and having to start over and all of that. And none of them are doing that with you. So they really don't know. They're not as emotionally attached to it because they really don't know the hoops that you jumped through in order to get to this point. So on our side, when you're like, yay, I did this, and they come at you and they're all, that's great, good for you, it feels like they're not really honoring your feelings. And the truth is that they can't honor your feelings if they don't really understand your feelings, because they're not there. So try not to allow that to dampen your celebration. This is your celebration. It's not theirs. It is yours. And so you want to you want to celebrate it, of course, but it doesn't mean that you have to celebrate it with them, right? You can celebrate it just as much by yourself as you can with others. And of course, you can always text me, and I'll do my best to to be a good friend and go, oh my God, that's awesome, you rock, because I can do that. I can do that. Other than that, this week I don't see a whole lot of anything other than in terms of the horoscopes, the focus is still on the mind. So make sure that you're not in 20 different places at once in here, because that is going to confuse things. And that actually may be the reason why you keep getting stuck and you keep getting stuck and you keep getting stuck, is because you really need to spend that time meditating and just quieting all that stuff down so that you can focus on one thing at a time. So that is what I have for you. And I'm moving on to Sheri, my friend Sheri, Sheri Hubble. Okay. I do see a busy week for you too. And the first word that comes up is reorganizing. I'm not sure if you're reorganizing to get yourself ready for somebody moving in, because I know that's something that we talked about, but I don't really see that. I actually don't see that happening like that quickly. But I will say that I kind of get the feeling that you're moving things around a little bit, and it's not in your house. I feel like it's in the main house more, and it's little changes that kind of need to be made in order for things to flow a little bit better for you. I know that since your mom passed, there's been a whole lot of don't move anything, leave it all exactly where it was, kind of a thing. But I feel like that's, in some cases, I feel like that's starting to lift a little bit, and that specific places in the home maybe need to be reorganized for a new function, if that makes sense. So, let's talk about the sewing room, for example. The sewing room it was your mom's, and of course, she loved it, but nobody is going to use it like that anymore. So it becomes a room that it doesn't really have a function. It's just sort of there. And so I feel like this process is starting to kind of reorganize and change things a little bit. And know that your mom is not going to be angry about it. She's not, standing over you, yelling at you because you're moving her things or anything like that. I know that that's not what's going to happen. But it feels like you have to reorganize this room. Like, you have to create this space for a purpose, be it an extra room, just in case, with a bed in it, so that if you have to sleep in the house, at least you have a bed to sleep in, because you're watching your dad, or, various different things. So I feel like that process is really starting, or it's about to start this week. And I feel like, where you may not have been quote unquote motivated to do that before, I feel like that motivation is starting to come up this week, as well as you get through, into the summer. And it's also, of course, a thing that you can do inside where there's air conditioning, because of course it's hot as what out there. I feel like that's going to be helpful as well. So it just, they kind of sort of line up, if that makes sense. And if you haven't thought about putting a bed in that room, actually, it would not be a bad idea, just so that you have that space, and you have a space in both places. You're not sleeping on the couch, kind of a thing. It's also highly possible that that was your mother's idea all along. Just putting that out there. So that is what I have for you. And I'm going to move on to Peg. After I drink my coffee. It's so good. It's so good. Okay, Peg, let me see what we got here. So I feel like I don't know why I'm this. It's sort of like I'm going through a playlist in my head of songs from like the 60s, the 50s and the 60s, if that makes sense. And I want to say that this is associated with a place. Um, but I also want to say that part of this playlist is sort of attached to a person, if that makes sense. So I'm not sure if this is a person that has passed already, or if this is a person that is, is living, but you would sort of think of them whenever you would hear these songs. And I'm not necessarily saying that there's going to be a death in the family or a death around you this week. I mean, that's always possible, but that's not necessarily what I'm picking up. I feel like what's really sort of going on here is either there's a reconnection with somebody from the past that's coming up, or you may find yourself needing to spend more time with a particular individual than you normally would. Either this person is having some health issues, or for whatever reason they're just going to need more help than they normally do. That can be, of course, I mean, knowing you as I do, I feel like you would hop right to it, but I also feel like you have other things planned for this week already that are going to have to be maybe rescheduled or moved around, and that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for you, and maybe cause a bit of stress, if that makes sense. Anytime that I have anything extra in my week, it does feel like it just screws everything up. And that's really kind of annoying. So it's an annoyance and a frustration more than it is actually causing any kind of damage or anything like that. So that's one thing that's coming up. The other thing that I'm picking up is I see flowers, and these flowers are like, what are they called? I couldn't tell you what they're called, but it's like they have those, it's like a bush, and when the flowers come out, it looks like a great big flower, but it's made up of a whole bunch of little flowers. You usually see them in bushes in front of houses and stuff like that. I've seen them in pink, I've seen them in blue, I've seen them in purple. I want to say chrysanthemum, but that is not what these are. In any case, I'm seeing pink and blue flowers, which is normally you would associate those two colors with the baby, somebody having a baby or announcing a baby around you. So I'm not sure if that may be it, or I also spiritually look at a baby as something that is a new project. This is your new baby, right? And so there may be an element of, you have a new project that you want to launch, and somebody else's needs kind of sort of get in the way of that. Does not mean that you won't be able to launch that baby. It just means that you might have to maybe think about launching the baby in the next couple of weeks rather than this week, because of things that are coming up. So that is what I have for you, Peg. And I'm going to move on to Sheri, my mama Sheri. Let me see here. Okay, I'm actually being shown a situation coming up with your daughter, with Kim. And I kind of feel like it's sort of a panic about one of the kids, but it's not, like it seems worse than it actually is. sort of one of those things where, you know, when you have a baby and the baby gets sick and there's certain symptoms and you go, oh my God, it's chicken pox, and then it turns out to be, you know, just a regular kid cold or flu, like you know it normally is. So I kind of get this feeling like she's going to call and it's going to be a panic, and then you're going to worry about the kid, and then blah, blah, blah. And then it turns out to be not quite as bad as maybe the panic was. And I don't think she does it on purpose. I mean, she's not a dramatic person. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that, it's better to try not to panic. I mean, I feel like you're going to have to be the one that is the stability here, and to kind of sort of help her to step out of her panic and look at this in a logical way, get the kid to the doctor, you know, have the tests done, you know, all of those things. I'm also being told to tell you that you really need to trust your intuition and what you're picking up around the child. And I, to be honest with you, cannot tell you which one it is. Because if your intuition is saying something and the doctor comes back with something else, have her go back and double check and just make sure that they've done all the tests that they need to do. In some situations that happens, you know, and so, but you also want to really manage your own panic over this, because really you both can't panic. If you both panic, then things are going to go very wrong. And if you panic, it's going to make your daughter panic more. And then of course you don't want to do that either. So there's a balance there. You know, if you are going to go through your quote unquote panic phase, do it after she's off the phone, obviously. But also use what you got, baby, to really see the situation for what it is, outside of your feelings and your panic over it. It's very difficult as a mom, as a grandma, as a great grandma. We worry about our kids. And, you know, every time one of my kids is going through something, I will tell myself the same thing. If I just connect to spirit and ask what it is, you know, it's probably not as bad as I think, but I always forget because it's my kid. And, you know, that's not something I automatically go to with my kids. With with everything else, yes, but not necessarily with the kids. So it's, you know, it's normal, it's nature. You just got to remember who you are, and that you know, have a way to look into this without being a disruptive for Kim or the child. So make sure that you do that. The other thing, and I mean, I don't see this as something that takes up the whole week. It's just sort of a conversation. It happens. The kid goes to the doctor. Turns out it's this. It's fine as long as it lines up with what you're picking up. If it doesn't, send them back to the doctor again. Pardon me. The only other thing I'm picking up for next week is, yes, it's still going to be hot. I'm sorry, for this week. Yes, it's still going to be hot. And I kind of feel like you're coming up with different ways of dealing with that heat. That makes sense. So you have your air conditioner going. That's good. But it's almost like helpful household tips to keep cool. And it's Sheri's helpful household tips to keep cool. And I see some ideas coming up that will kind of help that situation a little bit more, so that it does kind of take, you know, give you some relief, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you. And my last reading is Karina Martin. Oh, that coffee is good. Okay, let me tune into Karina. Okay, I'm picking up a situation coming up this week where it feels like a meltdown is imminent, if that makes sense. This would be one of those types of situations where you're dealing with somebody, and I kind of see this happening at work, but I kind of see this maybe happening at home with somebody that's a family member as well. Not both, one or the other. Is this sort of one of those situations that catches you off guard where somebody just literally like decides that they're having a bad day and they decide to take it out on you, and emotionally reacting to it, or um, accepting their emotional garbage when you are in a perfectly good mood? That's something you want to avoid as much as possible. I feel like this is one of those instances, when you're at work and you're doing your job and everything seems to be okay, and then your boss comes up and he's had a bad day, so everything that you do is wrong, and he's just constantly yelling at you and this and that. For most Pisces, I kind of feel like you're a little bit different than most Pisces, but for most Pisces, a situation like that would just emotionally break them. I know a couple of Pisces who would just literally just start crying and not be able to deal with the situation. I feel though that for you, it's very important to avoid that as much as possible. And if this is something that's ongoing and keeps going, you need to stand up for yourself. You need to say, hey, I'm not your emotional punching bag. You're not, whatever you've got going on, I'm sorry that you've got it going on, but I'm not the person that you take it out on. Because that is the only way that it's going to stop. Especially if I find a lot of people will say, oh, I don't even, I just kind of let it, like a duck on water, and just kind of let it wash off. And I don't really say anything about it. I just sort of blah, blah, blah. If you don't say something about it, there are people that wind up thinking that it's okay to continue to do this to you because you're not resisting it. And if this is something that has happened before and keeps coming up, nothing is going to change until you do say something about it. So this may be one of those instances, if it's not an isolated incident where it's not something that's ever happened before, then by all means deal with it, in the way that you always have. If it is not an isolated incident and this is something that keeps on coming up all the time, it may be time to nip it in the bud. And the person is going to be resistant. They're not going to want to stop. They're not going to want to change their behavior. Whether they want to or not is irrelevant. If it's bothering you or if it's too much for you, it's not healthy for you either. And it's really not healthy for them. They're not dealing with their stuff in the most healthy way for them either. They're just trying to transfer it to somebody else, and that doesn't work. It's not like they are getting rid of it. They're sharing it. They're not transferring it. They're sharing it. So keep that in mind when you make that decision, because basically what I'm trying to get at here is it's never going to stop. And if it gets to the point where it's overwhelming you and you can't deal with it anymore, well, then you need to be the one to make it stop. And that doesn't mean beat them up. It doesn't mean lose your shit or anything like that. You can communicate in a way that the person will hear the words that you're saying. And Pisces are really good at communicating in a way where the person feels what they're saying. Now, this is not manipulating, okay? Because manipulating sounds very similar, okay? You're not trying to get to manipulate somebody to change themselves for you, okay? But you are picking and choosing words for a purpose, and that purpose being that you want them to understand it's disrespectful. You are done dealing with it. You want it changed. You want the behavior changed. And when you find those right words, it allows that person to think about what it is that they're doing rather than attacking them because they're wrong, which will only really result in an argument. And if this is a work situation, could also result in you losing your job, which you don't want, right? Um, outside of that situation, I'm not seeing anything else majorly happening coming up for you this week, but I do feel like if you are able to fix this situation, even temporarily, it's a good idea to celebrate. I mean, it is a big deal for you to be able to do this. Not saying that you were completely unable to do it before, but it is going to change the energy of the relationship. And I'm not seeing this as a relationship that you can just walk away from. So the next best thing is to change the energy of the relationship. And when you do that, it makes the relationship a lot easier to deal with from here on out, especially if it's been a difficult relationship for a while. So that is what I have for you. And that is actually what I have for everybody. So that wraps up our readings for this week. If you are looking at these readings and you're not on the list, click the link below and you can get yourself on the list at any time. And when you click the link below, you will become a site member. I will have to approve that due to spam issues that I'm having right now. Once I approve that, we can talk and figure out which of the memberships is best for you. Again, I am Melissa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. These are the readings for the week ending 7/23. I hope you guys have a great week. I know that you will, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.